Hello everyone and welcome to episode 28, this one of In Case You Missed It. This time I'm actually by myself. I'm here, James Floodgate, doing the podcast by myself. Tommy is busy and has got a lot of stuff going on, so he won't actually be here for a couple of weeks now. So go and follow him at Mr. TT Green. I'm sure he'll have his say on all the film headlines or any film headlines that grab his attention. So this episode, as you probably have seen from the time code that you would have seen clicking on this episode, will be a little bit shorter. It's me by myself. Next week, hopefully, we'll have someone else to come and guest and mix things up while Tommy's on hiatus. Maybe we'll cause a little bit of chaos without him as well. We're still going to jump into all the usual stuff as we want to get an episode out, so it will be a little bit shorter. But let's go into the trailers to start with. We've got a couple of bigish ones. As we said for a couple of weeks now, we've kind of got these Oscar-y sort of films. And the trailer this week for Little Women is definitely one of those films that you imagine will be in the award season when you look at especially when you look at the cast of Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh. Meryl Streep is 100% going to get her yearly nomination from this film. Laura Dern and Greta Gerwig. This is her second film, I believe. I don't know. It's her latest film after she did Lady Bird, which she got a nom for as well, which also was with Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet as well. So I imagine this looks like the sort of film. Obviously, being a period piece as well, I know that there's been other adaptations of this story as well, so that kind of adds in that sort of audience there. And you just look at this as award season written all over it. As I said, the cast looks outstanding, and I remember that when we did our most anticipated for the year, that this was definitely one that Tommy was definitely looking forward to. So it's a shame that he's not here to talk about it, because I'm sure this would be a big yes for him this week, and probably one that he'll cry at as well. For my question around this sort of film is a difficult one. I can imagine it being, I don't know, it's where I have faith in Greta Gerwig to kind of do something different with it and put her own sort of style on and keep it interesting, because that's these sort of films. I'm going to compare it to Saoirse Ronan's Margot Robbie's film last year, Mary Queen of Scots, in that film was good, but it wasn't great, and I think it needed that extra thing. And I'm kind of getting a similar sort of vibe from this trailer as to where I think it just is going to need that something, and maybe a short runtime would help it to kind of keep it moving. I don't want it to be a slow burner. Otherwise, I can see it being quite dull and quite boring, perhaps. But I don't know, when you've got this cast and, like I said, Greta Gerwig doing it, and she's adapted this screenplay as well. Another one that I imagine she'll probably potentially get a nom for as well. So we'll see how this film goes when it comes out in December. But for now, it's a yes. It's a tentative yes. I don't think I'm as locked and sure on it as Tommy would be. This next trailer that we got was for Last Christmas, starring Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding, from Paul Feig. Now, Paul Feig is an interesting one. Yeah, he did work with Melissa McCarthy a lot. I can't remember if they're married or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. They might be, they might not be. I don't know. But Emilia Clarke is, I don't know. I'll get some other facts because this film itself is actually quite interesting. But Emilia Clarke, apart from Game of Thrones, she's kind of worried me. I think it was Me Before You, she did with Sam Claflin, and she didn't knock it out of the park there. I felt we're still looking for her to add the sort of performance that she had with Daenerys in Game of Thrones, and when you look at that and Terminator and even Solo, I think she added a little bit more to that, and I think she worked well in that film, and her character was interesting and something I'd like to see more of in the Star Wars universe. Whether we will or not, I don't know. But I don't know, from this trailer, I actually liked it, and it looked like she, I don't know, maybe it was the Paul Feig, maybe it was the content, the story, sort of Britishness of the film. I think that kind of really worked and played into her strengths there, and the natural comparison will be Me Before You for her, So I wonder how it's going to be, but I think it's got that British sort. I don't know. Even me before you had that British sort of thing. Now I think about it, but I think what's going to work is Henry Golding. And I really like Henry Golding. He really impressed me last year because he was in A Simple Favor, which was obviously another Paul Feig film, which was great and different for Paul Feig. I didn't like some of his other stuff, Paul Feig, especially Ghostbusters. I really didn't like. I'm not as big a fan of Bridesmaids as a lot of people are, but I'm interested in this film. I like what it's gone for. The screenplay is actually written by Emma Thompson as well, which I thought was interesting. So it'd be interesting to see how well this film sort of does. This being the first like proper Christmas Eve sort of film that we've got a trailer for this year. So again, a sort of tentative sort of yes, because these sort of films they've got their audience that they're going to go for, the sort of Love Actually sort of audience that will go and that's a good comparison because it's like Christmas time. It's that sort of audience. It's actually got an earlier November release date here in the UK. I don't know what it's got in the US. But I'm optimistic about it. I'm going to give this a yes. I think there's definitely enough in there. I'm interested to see Emilia Clarke and her to do something different and see her step out now that Game of Thrones finished, if she can really progress past that and show us what talent she's got, because she's definitely got it. You can see that in Game of Thrones, and yeah, I'm interested to see what else she brings to the table. Dolomite Is My Name is the next trailer that we got, the Netflix film starring Eddie Murphy, and we haven't seen him for a while. I'm glad he's sort of making this sort of comeback. The last sort of thing I remember him being in was the SNL anniversary a few years ago now. I believe he's got a deal with Netflix. I think he's doing some stand-up and coming back in that sort of angle. We've also got Coming to America 2 next year, I believe. And this one, I don't know much about Dolomite. I can't think of the guy's real name, but the original Dolomite film, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about the story behind the guy, Rudy Ray Moore. And I don't know, I'm really interested to see what they do with it. I'm getting sort of I don't know, I was going to say Rocket Man sort of vibe, but it's not musical. But like that's the similar sort of vibe I get to it. My worry is if Eddie Murphy still has it. I think of films like a Norbit, whatever one, which I didn't like. There was the other one where he played the people inside his own head. And I think he was just missing a mark, and because his original stand-up stuff was so funny, and when he had that peak when he was like after SNL, even like when his early Shrek days, and I think after that he kind of struggled to find himself and weave his way in. I think we're going to see a resurgence in him, but it's whether he can. This one looks a little bit more serious, and I like that from him. I really like to see comedians do the serious sort of stuff, and I think that's some of the best stuff. I look at Jim Carrey in Eternal Sunshine as one of my favorite films of all time, and Steve Carell, I think, does some amazing performances as well. And I think there's real precedent to do that if he can do it. I don't want him to play too much into the laughs, which I'm a little bit worried about this film might do. And it being in Netflix as well, it can easily just come out and flop. And I just don't know. I really don't know about this one. Because of if it's going to go for the more serious stuff that I got through most of the trailer, I'd say yes for. But it was those moments of comedy where I was like, oh, I really don't know. Yeah, I'm going to give it a yes for now. But if I actually watch it, it might just. That's the problem with these Netflix films. They kind of just come out and you just forget because they come out so quickly after the trailer does. And then they're either not on the homepage of Netflix, or they are and you just add it to the list, and then it just gets moved to further down in the list. The final trailer we got this week was for Terrence Malick's next film, A Hidden Life. Terrence Malick, the director of Thin Red Line, a few years ago, he hasn't done anything major. He's done films since then, but nothing huge that has come to such acclaim as his other films. And this trailer grabbed my attention because of the cinematography in it. I think I spoke last week, I can't remember which, I think it was Honey Boy now saying it, that really grabbed my attention from a cinematography point of view. and you could see straight away in this trailer that they're trying something different, and well, not different is the word. It's that stuff we've seen, but it was so fluidy, it's so janky, and that, I don't know, that didn't work for me. Yeah, I get what they were trying to do. I don't know how, if it will be. I think that sort of works. That's sort of shots where you're moving in like it does at the beginning of this trailer. If you go and watch this trailer, the camera properly is moving quite quickly in with the actors, and it doesn't work for me in this trailer. There's some really great shots, and it looks like some beautiful locations as well. Um, it looks like an interesting story. These war stories sort of seem to be the thing at the moment. I wonder if it was a Wonder Woman, Dunkirk sort of thing, or they've really brought about this resurgence. But there's some great war film. When you look at 1917, I think that's going to be the big contender. And this film's not coming out in the UK until early January next year, which is it's that Oscar season. Although I'm looking at the runtime and it says 2 hours and 53. And that's not going to draw people in unless it gets good word of mouth. And it's too early to say that I've heard anything. But it's a long run time, and people aren't going to watch that unless it's good. So I can see his IMDb rating is 7 out of 10 at the moment, and that's I don't know. I don't tend to trust IMDb that much, but yeah, I don't know. This I'm going to give it a tentative yes. I like that they're taking risks with the cinematography. I like the war sort of story, and you've got this guy that's refusing to fight for the Nazis, and I'm interested to see where that goes. But the 2 hours 50 runtime is really putting me off, to be honest. That's it for the trailers, and maybe if you go and tweet Tommy and Mr. TG Green, he'll let you know what he thought of any of those trailers. Let's go into the headlines this week. We've got a few ones, and then we're going to do. There's quite a lot of Disney news, so we'll get to that later on. The biggest headline, we've already spoke about him a little bit today, was Henry Golding is going to play Snake Eyes in G.I. Joe spin-off. And I don't know much about the character Snake Eyes. We're in the UK, we didn't really have G.I. Joe. We had Action Man, which I think was like a similar sort of alternative. As far as the film goes, I've only watched the first one, and I remember really enjoying that at the time. I would have obviously been a bit younger, as I'm trying to look up what year that first film comes out. But I remember having a good time with it, but I never got around to seeing Retaliation. The first one came out in 2009, so I would have been 13, I suppose. So I was probably prime age for that sort of film. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm interested that they're still carrying on with this franchise. I think Snake Eyes is probably the most interesting character. For those who don't know, he I think is in Vietnam, where he gets his face blown off and that sort of thing, and I don't know, it's something like that. And he then can no longer talk, or it's something like that. But I don't know. I'm excited for that Henry Golding's doing it, and that's definitely got my attention more. I'm really interested to see the martial arts sort of side of it, the sword fighting sort of side of it. I think his stuff, from what I've heard as well in Retaliation, is the most interesting stuff. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with it. Henry Golding is a great actor. I remember when we did our Phase 4 pictures for the MCU, when we did that for In Development. I think I put him down as what's his name? What is it? Shang-Chi, that's it. Shang-Chi, I think I had him down for that. And I think he's ready for this sort of big role. You can see he was in Simple Favor, he was in Crazy Rich Asians, he was great in both of those. And obviously, we talked about earlier last Christmas, he's getting himself out there. And I think he's a leading man, and it's really cool to see. The other one, the next headline is, it was kind of a little while ago now, but I wasn't sure how to talk about it at the time, which is why we didn't discuss it. But it was the Warner Brothers have cancelled. I think it's Warner Brothers. It might not be now. I've said that. I'm gonna look it up, but there was Blumhouse definitely are involved. I don't know who's distributing it, and it is Universal. It was Universal, not Warner Bros. Sorry. So Universal have cancelled the release of the film The Hunt, and they came out in a statement and said that's because of the mass shootings and the subject of the film. They don't want it to conflict. But prior to the film, it's come out that there's people saying that there's some political sort of side of it, and it deals with people hunting those politicians down. I think that says, so the film has now been forcibly cancelled by the government, and that's, I don't know, it's a difficult one. I just wanted to raise attention. I don't want to talk about it too much, because one, there isn't particularly anything we can do about it. It looks like it's going to be shelved, inevitably, and I'd be surprised if we kind of saw this film ever released, to be honest. But it's a really difficult one. I think there should be some sort of freedom about it. I think that it kind of brings up the whole video game sort of controversy as well, about if that influences what goes on. And I personally don't believe that it does. And I think so many people watch these sort of films. I think there is dangerous precedent sometimes, and I think Tommy spoke about it when he spoke about the Joker trailer and what the potential of getting the wrong message from that. And I could see that sort of angle. Some people getting the wrong angle, but I think it is a bad idea necessarily, especially as it looks like it's not going to get a release at all. I really don't know. It's a dangerous sort of precedent. As Tommy's spoken before, go and check out. I think when we spoke about the Joker trailer a while ago, you can go back and find on one of our old, in case you missed episodes, to hear what Tommy, I'm sure he would have said a similar sort of thing as to what he was, would have said about that. The last headline before we move on to our big topic of the week is that Rian Johnson is still moving forward with his Star Wars trilogy. He's started doing press for his latest film, Knives Out, which comes out in a couple of months, and I can't wait for that. I know we spoke about the trailer again a few weeks ago. But I'm kind of surprised that we didn't really hear anything about that. We've heard a lot more about the Benioff and Weiss stuff, and whether we'll hear anything about that next week. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. But Rian Johnson, his trilogy wasn't actually announced, but I think it was announced before The Last Jedi, and everyone was like, "Oh, that must mean Disney have such faith in Rian Johnson to continue this franchise, whatever it may be." And then The Last Jedi came out controversially. Obviously, a lot of fans don't like it. I personally do. I know I've spoken about it multiple times in this podcast. But we haven't heard anything about it, and you do still wonder, because of the reception, what's going to happen. But Disney are obviously happy with him, happy with the job that he did, and are willing to give him this creative freedom. And I think that will work better for him. I think once people see Knives Out, I'm sure it'll be decent, hopefully anyway. Hopefully for him, that'll get some fans back on board and give him some more faith. And I think people would be willing to see this trilogy that he's got to show us, and potentially, I don't know when this trilogy will now be, whether it be a Disney Plus thing, because we've got the next few quite a while set out for Star Wars in that we haven't got one next year. Then I think it's Avatar 2, and then the year after that it'll be Star Wars, and then Avatar, then Star Wars. I think it's going like that for a few years. So I don't know whether after the first Benioff and Weiss trilogy, whether they'll take a break from that and then do the Rian Johnson stuff, or whether, like I said, maybe he'll do a Disney Plus film, and we'll see what happens there with that. I don't know what I'd like to see him just do something completely different. I don't know what you call it. People say maybe it'll be Bruin Boy, and I know there's some speculation around that. I don't really want that. I think what I'd be interested to see Rian Johnson do is a similar sort of underworldy sort of stuff, which we're going to get in The Mandalorian. I think this, and I suppose we are going to get that as well with the what's his name? Cassian. There we go. Cassian. I think we're going to get a similar sort of underworldy sort of thing, but I can see Ryan Johnson just doing his own story in the Outer Rim, just playing around there, and just give him the freedom to do whatever. You can see he's got talent. We know that he's got talent from his Looper and Brick and everything else he's done. He's definitely got talent. I think if you give him freedom to create whatever he wants, I think it was a mistake to give him Large Egg, just because it doesn't continue what JJ was setting up, and the fact that JJ's now come on to do 9, he's probably come on a little bit frustrated that stuff that he was setting up didn't quite go where I wanted. I don't like as much as I do like the film, I don't like that it picks up straight away. I think that is a mistake. But I would be interested to see what Ryan Johnson has to do with his own Star Wars trilogy. So the big topic this week is all the Disney news, as we always get. And the first kind of big thing that came out this week was that they're not impressed with New Mutants, and this film has been going out around for a while. I remember I was excited about it. I think it was supposed to come out April last year. It might have even been supposed to come out like the summer before that. Eventually getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and I was really excited. I'm excited to see different sort of films with a superhero film, and this obviously being a horror film set in the X-Men universe. I liked that. I liked that it was going to be different. I liked the younger cast. And then there was talks of reshoots, and then those reshoots haven't happened. And now that it's over, Fox is now merged with Disney, or Disney taken over Fox. Disney have taken this film on, and they're not happy with it. I don't think they know what to do with it necessarily, or should they reshoot some of it, or should they just leave it the way it is, because obviously they're going to do their own X-Men thing in the future. Maybe we'll potentially hear about that next week at D23. But if you were Disney, if I was Disney, if I was Bob Iger, I would say just put it on Disney+. I think that's the easiest way for them. I don't think audiences care about this film. I don't think people I think if it came out of the box office, it'd flop. I think people get confused now about who owns what world this is set in. And as much as the cast probably want to see it on the big screen, I just don't think that's realistic with everything that's gone on with the takeover and the fact that Disney don't know what to do with it. Just put it out on the streaming service. People can watch it then, make up their own mind about it, instead of risking it in the cinema, and having to market it that way, whereas you could just easily put it on their streaming service and they'll probably get views on there. People will check it out, and I think it'll probably have a better home on there than it would in the cinema, competing against everything else that comes out next year. I can't remember when it's supposed to be. I don't even know if it has really set under Disney. The next bit of news we spoke about a little bit a couple of weeks ago when we had the casting for Little Mermaid, and we have our Ariel, and it looked like Harry Styles was gonna play the prince in Little Mermaid, and he has reportedly turned down the role. It seems like he wants to be doing some more acting. Obviously in Dunkirk, he was up for the role of Elvis in the biopic that was going to happen. That is going to happen, and it went to Austin Butler, I think it was. And so he obviously wants to still get out there, but he obviously doesn't feel this role is right for him, or that someone else can do it better. Maybe he's the one turning it down, which is the interesting thing. And that's what the reports are saying, that he's the one turning it down. So I'm interested to see who Disney get in as a replacement instead. If they do get, well, they will get a replacement in, of course. I don't know. I don't have anyone particular in mind for this. I'm sure I imagine they'll get some casting again, maybe next week with D23. There's another announcement they can make there, the full cast of that. And that would make a lot of sense to me now I think about it. The whole cast potentially coming out. We know that I think it was Simu Liu who was announced at Shang-Chi just a few days before they brought him out. Marvel brought him out at Comic-Con. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. a similar sort of thing with this role. I think it's Prince Eric. And the rest of the Little Mermaid cast, we already know that Awkwafina is going to be in it, and Joseph Tremblay? Something Tremblay. He's going to be in the role in the film as well. The most exciting bit of news that came out, and it sort of came out of nowhere. We've had these rumors for ages that Ewan McGregor sounds like he'd been in talks for a while, and whether Disney had something planned with a solo film. I wonder a Star Wars story, if that was in the works before the solo film flopped. I reckon it probably was, and then kind of backed out, and scheduling just hasn't lined up. But we're getting reports now that he has signed on a contract to do a series now on Disney Plus. And for anyone who knows, I've spoke about it already this episode. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and Obi Wan Kenobi is probably my favourite character. And the Ewan McGregor version of that, I do like the prequels more than most people do, apart from Attack of the Clones. But I like Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith more than most people, and even some stuff in Attack of the Clones. When I think of Ewan McGregor and his storyline, I think that's an interesting sort of storyline. And Ewan McGregor really adds. He's in a different world to everyone else. He's acting circles around Hayden Christensen. And speaking of him, now that we know that we're getting this series, I do wonder whether Hayden's going to come back, whether we'll see a return of Vader. I think there's wiggle room there. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a return of Darth Maul. I think those two are particularly. I'm interested to see. I think it's Sabine. No, I can't remember the name, but there's a character in the Clone Wars that he kind of flirts with, and I'd like to see a return to that. People are saying it will be a 6 to 8 episode thing, which we're also hearing for the Loki series as well, which makes a lot of sense. And I want to see some hermit Obi-Wan just chilling out on Tatooine. Maybe he goes off-world at some points to try and protect this Luke, and I just want to see what he's up to over this. And I don't think it needs to be a one series thing. I think there's so much time in between. We could literally, Ewan McGregor still looks great, and we could pick up just after Revenge of the Sith, and then we've got about 19 years or so before A New Hope happens. So there's definitely a lot of time in there that they could play with, and if they want to do more than one series, I think there's definitely potential there. But again, I don't want them to go too hard. But it's now a chance to where we could see a 6 to 8 hour film of Obi Wan Kenobi, and I think that looks the way that Disney Plus are going to go, and I don't necessarily blame them. Release wise, we're probably looking I'd say 2021 if they're going to announce it next week at D23. I'm going to talk a little bit about some stuff that potentially here next week at D23 as well in a second, but I think we will get an announcement there. I think he'll come out on stage, and I imagine I don't think they'll say a release date, but when you think of Mandalorian, it's going to be at the end of this year. I think Cassian hasn't started shooting yet. I'm expecting some potential cast maybe at D23 for Cassian's show, maybe, or maybe they'll save that until Star Wars Celebration next year. And yeah, Obi-Wan's Kenobi, I imagine it'll be called Kenobi, and that'll be after that. So we've got a while away before that. Now, the interesting thing here is that Cassian's story would obviously take place in a similar sort of time to Obi-Wan, so there could be potential crossover on these Disney Plus shows. I wouldn't hate that. Speaking of D23, this next weekend, we'll probably have to have a later episode again next week to kind of cover everything. We don't want to miss any Marvel announcements. They've got potentially Phase 5 maybe. What? I don't know, we'll see. Some Black Panther 2 maybe, Captain Marvel 2, maybe some mutants. We'll see what happens for Fantastic Four maybe. And Star Wars, yeah, I'm expecting the Obi-Wan, potentially a first full trailer for Rise of Skywalker maybe. And Yeah, I'm expecting Little Mermaid cast as well. I think that would make a lot of sense, and I'm sure they'll show off some. The problem with D23 is that we never normally get much out of D23 is posted online, annoyingly. Um, Something else that they might talk about is these mini-series that Toy Story have got in the works. Um, I think it was on Collide Live. I think they had the director of Toy Story 4 go on, and he spoke about different series that they're going to be doing for characters like Forky, like Bo Peep, and I think that's really cool. And I'm sure I don't think I've had official confirmation from Disney that they're doing those, but I imagine we will. And that's Disney's way of trying to catch up to Netflix and get this content out, which is why it seems at the moment like there's so much coming out. I don't know. I think Disney Plus is going to be huge. I think everyone's going to be after it, and going to have to be. I think The Mandalorian is a big sell. I think stuff like a Loki show is going to be a big sell, and I'm really interested to see what we get next week. Speaking of Toy Story 4, it became Disney's 5th film to cross $1 billion this week, which is insanity. As we move into box office talk, Toy Story, not really a surprise that it's crossed $1 billion. Not really a surprise. It's a huge franchise, isn't it? It's huge marketing, and children love it, adults love it. People who've grown up with it now, and for Disney to, it's when you look at Captain Marvel, Marvel's first female-led superhero in the MCU. And Avengers Endgame, obviously the highest grossing film of all time. Aladdin, huge. Lion King, huge. Toy Story, another one, huge. Now, when you've got a Frozen 2, you've got a Star Wars, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, about they've already had their record-breaking year. I think they're definitely on track to get to that 10 billion now. Let's look at last week's box office, as I just get that up, as I wasn't prepared enough to get those weekends. Actually, no, we did it on last week's show. But just to go over that, we had Once Upon a Time coming in at 5th place with 11.6 million. Dora and the Lost City of Gold with 17.4 million. The Lion King in 3rd place with 20.2 million. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark in 2nd place with 20.9 million. And Hobbs and Shaw coming in 1st place with 25 million. Not particularly any surprises. If you want to go and hear a little bit more talk about that, go and check out our last episode. And as far as predictions for this one, well, let's look at the films that we've got coming out. We've got Angry Birds 2, 47 Meters Down, Uncaged, Blinded by the Light, Good Boys, and Wedge Go Bernadette. A couple of those definitely expecting to make way. I'm particularly looking at 3 of those. Good Boys, 47 Meters Down, and Angry Birds 2, I would say, are going to be in there. And my prediction is now being 5th place. I'm going to say 47 Meters Down. I think it's that horror. I think there's a little bit of buzz about it as well. I think the last one did well, had good life, and went for a while. I'm going to say a solid 12 million for that. In 4th place, I'm going to say The Lion King. I'm going to put in with I would put 12 million for 47 Meters Down. So I'm going to say 13 for Lion King. In 3rd place, I'm going to put Hobbs and Shaw. I think it's dropped off. I think people have seen it. I think everyone's seen it now. Who cares? So I think that's going to make about 15 million. Angry Birds 2 is reaching that child sort of market. We haven't had a really children's film for a while, since Lion King. But I think they've gone back to school in America. I'm still going to say, as to this one, Angry Birds is a big name. I'm going to say 18 million for Angry Birds. And then I'm going to say Good Boys 1. I'm going to put it at about 20 million. I think there's good word of mouth about it. It's that super bad sort of vibe, but it's got that good run, that good name. It's got Seth Rogen attached to it and promoting the film. Apparently he's not even in the film, but it's that promotion thing that really gets people in. And yeah, tune back and see next week and see how I did, and make advantage of while Tommy's gone. I don't know if I'm going to keep track of these, if it's fair. I don't know. I haven't decided. I'll decide during the week. But that's it for this week's show. A little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, actually, as I've been waffling by myself. But go and check out us on social media. There were a couple of people, if you're listening, check your Instagram DMs and requests. You might have got one our Dragged Across Concrete Blu-ray giveaway, so go and check out that. If you won, we got one recipient who that should be on their way to them. And go and check us out on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. Facebook at Insider Network. YouTube, if you're not watching there and you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go and give us a rate and review. If you're not listening to us on Apple Podcasts, go on Apple Podcasts. Go and subscribe. Go and rate on there as well. If you're listening to us on Apple, subscribe. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, go and subscribe on YouTube. Go and leave a like on there. That really helps as well. And check out all our content. We've got my intent to celebrate the release of 47 Meters Down and Crawl, which is coming out at the end of this week in the UK. We should have a review for that coming out as well. And I'm going to do my top 10 21st century horror films, so check back on Wednesday on the YouTube channel for that one. And see who'll be number 10 or 10 through 1 there. Go and check us out on Instagram at Insider Network. Go and follow us on Twitter at Insider Network _. Check us out on Facebook. I've already said that. Go and do it anyway. Keep up to date with the film news. And go and follow Tommy and Mr. T2 Green. Go and follow everyone else who's been on every other episodes of these things. Go and follow me at Floodgate28. And we will see you next week. I'll see you next week. Tommy isn't here. He won't see you next week. Maybe we'll have a guest on. I've spoken enough. I've got a dry voice. Goodbye.